We are joined by Mr. IPO, the IPO lawyer, Andrew Tarbuck, partner and head of capital markets at Tamimi Co, to explain what's gone into the news that we've got this morning, the Talabat announcement that it will be going public. Andrew, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Brandy. How are you?
I am well. Thank you. And it's a nice thing to come back into the country to find a piece of ready-baked news for you so you're not scrambling around on a Monday morning. The Talabat IPO is go. The prospectus is out and the pieces of advertising that need to come out are in the newspapers. You're the lawyer who puts a lot of these public listings together. So we want to turn to you to understand what's happening right now and why. We've been speaking about the numbers to Samir Lakhani from an investment point of view. But explain to us first what a company needs to put in place legally to let people know it's happening. We've got ads in print newspapers. How quaint.
I know. We're very traditional here in the UAE. I think one of the things that Talabat prides itself on is actually speed in delivery. And one of the features of this Talabat IPO is actually the speed to market in terms of the initial leaks around whether or not it was going to IPO was only really a couple of months ago. And now you're actually seeing the announcement. So one of the real features of this particular IPO is that the company was obviously quite IPO ready to start with and has actually managed to put in place all the legal and regulatory building blocks pretty quickly because, the IPO window closes around about now. So they've got in just when they really need to.
Okay. What's an IPO window?
Okay, so essentially, if you announce a deal, then you actually have to go and market the deal for several weeks. If you're doing a retail offer in the UAE, you're usually open for at least a couple of weeks to retail investors, also building your book with the institutional investors. So there's a real lead time between the day that you announce, which is called an intention to float announcement, which is what Talabat has done this morning, to actually listing. So there's actually quite a few legal and regulatory steps in between the announcement and actual listing date, and there's a ton of marketing as well. So essentially, if you announce, say, in mid-December, you would not be actually listing until January. And so you've lost the momentum. So in many respects, this is the time, sort of end of November is around about the last time where you can get that offer period and the listing all in before year end.
What do you make of the timing? Q4, one of our busiest quarters.
Yeah, well, obviously it's a reflection of the wider market. You've had Lulu, and one of the things that deal has done is it's heavily oversubscribed. But obviously to the banks that are on the Talabat deal, they see that the demand is still there. So in terms of the actual market conditions, we're still in very benign IPO market conditions. We've had the Trump trade, we've had, all the general sort of tailwinds, I think, in the economy. And certainly the IPO market is still open from a market perspective. But it's how you actually get the deal across the line in time. We've got to draft prospectuses. That prospectus needs to be approved by the Securities and Commodities Authority. The company needs to put in place all of its corporate governance. So there's a lot to do just to get up to today. And it's a big moment for the company.
How long does it generally take a company to get IPO ready?
It completely depends on the readiness piece. So if the company is already operated to a very, very high standard, it has good internal reporting, its financial disclosures are regular, then, you can be looking at maybe 4 to 6 months. But usually it's sort of between 6 to 12. But it also depends on the market conditions, because if the market goes quiet, everything gets elongated. But what I will say is that ADNOC Gas, which is one that we advised on, we did that in 3.5 months, and that was a big one.
If we take a company like Talabat, we've got the parent company, Delivery Hero, that is already listed in Frankfurt. Does that make it easier?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the company as a group is already sort of used to the processes in terms of, what is required, what is its regular reporting, and its financials will be right up to speed. And so you also have all the if you like, sort of the internal furniture in the right place. You'll probably have an astounding, group legal counsel. You'll have a great treasury team, a great finance team. So actually putting together the IPO of a subsidiary, they've been through the process before. They know what it takes. And it actually is a lot easier second time round, I can tell you.
Do many companies start doing the groundwork for an IPO and decide, no, it's not for us?
Yeah, some do. Because what we do actually is, as a firm, as an advisory firm, is we do what we call a pre-IPO diagnostic, where we actually look at, a very sort of high level review of a company. And if there's some barriers to actually doing what they want to do, or they look at, well, will I maybe lose control of the company? The corporate governance is maybe they're not ready for it, or it's a family business and they don't want to go public quite yet, but they want to dip their water in, dip their sort of toes in to see what the IPO scene looks like. Yeah, so some do decide, after a sort of high level review, we're not going to do this. But most have decided they want to go down that track, and they pretty much pursue it sort of on a sort of longer term basis.
The IPO train here has been running now for a couple of years. I mean, it's become almost a standard interview question for us, whether we're speaking, to, well, the entertainer, Donna Benton, the other day was saying, it's a possibility.
Well, you wouldn't speak to me if the IPO market wasn't that busy, so I wouldn't see you guys.
Oh, we would, Andrew. What are you seeing, though, in terms of the trajectory of companies getting in touch for legal advice about potentially going public? Because this is one of the things the government wanted to happen when they put this whole plan together. What does that curve look like?
It's a great question, because we're now building the book for the IPOs for next year. So we've actually seen quite a lot of requests for our advice on deals, at least sort of 3 or 4 that will come next year. We've got a couple that we've been working on throughout this year to come next year, and that's all planned. So it's looking strong still. The pipeline is still there. And one of the big features is, I would say the vast majority of those IPOs are private companies, so non-government, so not a part of the privatization process. And that, from a capital markets perspective, I'm really excited about, because that's the piece. You put the privatization piece in, and then you have private companies who actually willing to IPO, and that really expands and benefits the capital markets as a whole.
We're seeing more and more private companies letting their numbers be known when they don't have to, because they're private companies. Is that a bit of a window into who might go public?
It is, to a degree. You'll be really fascinated when some boards, even as private companies, just want to be honest and open. But it also helps attract, even as a limited company, things like banks. If you want to go to the bank and get a working capital facility, but you can say, oh, but we disclose our accounts, then the bank is going to be really quite willing to lend, because they'll think, well, the mindset is around transparency. We can see the financials. So it actually helps. It helps negotiations with your contractors and suppliers, because you just look more organized and more transparent. And there's a sort of a more of an open relationship. And, you find a lot of private equity companies, for their portfolio companies, they will actually release financials. And it's just so that they can create limited partner interest, for example.
Well, a peek behind the IPO curtain with one of the lawyers who makes an awful lot of them happen. Andrew Tarbuck, partner and head of capital markets at Tamimi, speaking to us this morning. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Brandy.